ready? Are we good?
I mean, we're at the table.
No, I know. Like, are we good? Are we recording? Are we, like...
We tried to give Audie her own microphone today. Thank you for sticking around as we've tried to increase our audio and equipment.
If you've been here throughout all the episodes, thank you. Like,
homie, there's only 2.
This is the 3rd episode.
Well, yeah, if you've stayed around this long,
well, yeah, if you've stayed to the 3rd episode, that's an accomplishment. Some people don't get past the first 15 minutes of the 1st episode. Like,
and once you get past the 3rd date, it's easy street from there,
right?
Oh,
exactly.
In a California hospital, patients are mysteriously dying on the graveyard shift. Their internal organs are paralyzed as they slowly suffocate. The deaths devastate families searching for answers. The death toll climbs, and rumors and innuendo point to murder. Police must rely on science to stop an angel of death.
I don't like it.
What?
I don't like it.
I don't...
Hospitals.
Uh-oh.
I do like California, but I don't like anything about this. I don't like anything about this case.
Yeah. No, this case sucks.
It was not a fun time.
Definitely one of my...
Nightmares?
Yeah. Disclaimer, if you are scared of hospitals, needles, which is one of my biggest personal fears, of anesthetic awareness, that's basically what this whole thing is. And It's terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. I would like to start off by saying, they start off with a disclaimer letting us know that the name of the hospital and some of the names of the residents have been changed. I did a Google in 30 seconds and found the name of the hospital, and I will disclose it because they're garbage. So the name of the hospital
Shout out, Jillian.
The name of the hospital is Adventist Health Glendale in Glendale, California.
Say it one more time for the people in the back.
Adventist Health Glendale in Glendale, California. Don't fucking go there.
I have fears of hospitals anyway. I just have fear. I have trust issues, right? And just my life being in other people's hands. It's not something that I'm personally a fan of.
They're just scary. I appreciate what you do if you work in a hospital. My own husband is in school for nursing right now, so I appreciate y'all.
I mean, our sister's a nurse, but dog, it's not for me. Main disclaimer is that the name of the hospital, they don't say it in the documentary, and they do not say most of the names of the victims. They've changed them. If you're gonna make fake names, why did you pick
John and Bree or something? Super easy. It's
but no,
really complicated ones. We're opening up to creepy hospital reenactment footage.
Yep.
Where it literally looks like a ghost sitting on the side of a hospital bed, and I was like, oh. So that's what we're getting into. Okay.
And they're like, Trissa Johnson is struggling to hold on. Her husband has been with her every step of the way while she's in ICU. Which, tragic, yes. It's just the dramatic reenactment always gets me. They tell us that her husband's been with her every step of the way while she's in ICU, and they thought that she was getting better. But around 3 a.m., he goes in to get coffee, and that was the last time that he saw her alive. Her vital signs declined, and she went into a full arrest, and her heart stopped.
Literally moments after he walked out of the room.
Which I cannot imagine.
Literally, this is what happens, okay? I want you to think about this. He leaves the room to go get coffee with his wife that, keep in mind, is doing better, they say. She's going to go home in a couple days, she's fine. Comes back to the room surrounded, her bed surrounded by doctors. Mm-hmm. And being told that she died. And then I also just have, for the reenactment, because this reenactment footage is hilarious. At times, because it's just the acting, not the situations. The acting is very bad. And this is the perfect example of it, because literally Larry is running to his wife, and she's, passed away on the table or the bed, and the nurse is just trying to cover her up, and he's leaning down, and she's just like, oh, my bad. Please tell me you caught this.
I caught a lot of moments like that.
Oh, right. And I'm just like, what do you mean, oh, right? Then he literally walked in from getting a 3 a.m. coffee to his wife being dead, and you're just gonna cover her up and be like, yeah, sure, whatever, take your time.
Oh my god.
What?
Alright, so then we're introduced to our homeboy number 1, right? Bob Baker, who's gonna be with us throughout the documentary. He deals with lots of emergencies, lots of sadness. A lot of people die, and that's basically his opening line. Did you get that with him?
No, because I was concentrating too hard on the fact that your name is Bob Baker and you didn't go to culinary school. You're telling me you're not going to be a baker? Like, come on. Cake boss who?
Maybe the jokes really scarred him and he had to go into something like, you know?
But what would make you go, cake decorating surgery?
We don't know your life, Bob, but from the intro, you let me know right away that you've seen some shit.
I mean, I would expect so, working in ICU.
Yeah. All right, you want to go to John?
Sure. So
I mean, I don't want to.
No, never, but plow forward. So John Schwartz was having his hip replaced. Schwartz had been restrained to his bed so that way he didn't, like, roll over in his sleep or anything, you know, like, mess up the hip that he just had. It was normal, but I still just have... Nope. Like, I wouldn't want to be restrained to my table.
Ooh.
That's just scary to think about. Later that night, a nurse found him on the floor, which we find out later, I added this to my notes, that the nurse had left him at around 3:30 a.m. and had come back only 30 minutes later to him on the ground having cardiac arrest.
Mm-hmm. You know, the granddaughter saying that he was doing better, that she expected him to be home for the holidays. And then doctors rush in and no one can seem to do anything. And he was only there for a hip replacement and rehabilitation.
Yeah. It was literally like 15 minutes that he
was alone. That there was even a window of time for anything to have happened to him.
They say that it happened so fast that I'm forgetting what they're called, but the person that pronounces someone dead, they couldn't find them. Like, that's why his death time stamp was so late, because they couldn't even find the person. It was so fast.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Over the next month, the ICU is popping, right? Like, they've been seeing a lot of patients.
I'm just saying ICU is popping.
I don't mean popping like a party popping, but like, they're like, yeah, we've had a bunch of patients. We've been pretty full. So like, yeah, ICU's been popping. So anyway, they've been seeing a lot of patients. And that is when Sarah Ascari was rushed in for not being able to breathe. They were able to stabilize her. She did have a lung disease, but she was on her way to going home. But she doesn't, because at 4:10 a.m., her respiration rate shoot up and within 4 minutes stops breathing.
And she was a DNR, so they didn't revive her. We'll say DNR a lot throughout this. For anyone that doesn't know what DNR is, just a do not resuscitate, aka you can't do, you just let them die, for lack of better words.
Stop, that makes me sad. All of this makes me sad and I hate everything and everybody.
I mean, yeah. And before... this specific case, there had been a few more cases after John, to the point that a respiratory therapist department was starting to get alarmed. They couldn't figure out if it was a coincidence or deliberate, because, in that field, you never really know.
Okay, wait, but between that, strange scene of emotional nurse training younger nurse like young grasshopper. Which is the scene that you basically just told us about. She's like, gonna resuscitate, and then she tells the young nurse, it's DNR. Yeah. You can't do anything. Yeah. And then you see, like, the wisdom in the one nurse and the like, wandering understandment of the second. It was just, I felt like that was...
The wandering understandment.
It was, like, a really emotional moment I felt in this documentary, and the only one that we get, but, I see you, actors. I see you.
So Bob Baker is in one of the storage closets with all the medicine and whatnot, and he finds a syringe and a vial, like a vial with a syringe taped to it, stuck in the closet. And that's one, like, not where they go. Two, they go, like, in a fridge or something in, like, a backed away place. So he was worried that someone was using and abusing drugs.
Right, because this whole hospital is like, what's going on? Is there something in the water, something in the air? And Bob's like, I feel like something fishy's going on, and then that's when he finds all this stuff.
And so he decides to confront everyone as if he is a dad coming downstairs at a 12-year-old sleepover to tell everyone that they are being too loud. And you just know everyone's looking around. Some of them, like, one of them's laughing because they just think it's funny. One of them's terrified, and the other one's just like,
we're doing this? Right, and so that's kind of what it is, and everyone dismisses it. But Baker's like Scooby-Doo. Like, he knows that something's going on, but he doesn't like it, and he doesn't really trust anybody. So he's like, no, he's committed to there's something going on. Trust your instincts, Bob.
Right. So then we meet Jean Doyle and her daughter, Michelle Elmore. Every time she was short of breath, she would call the staff. She was always short of breath. And then I just have the scene of this doctor, ma'am, please stop, ma'am, because she's literally
calling them nonstop.
He's standing there, and all I could think of was that vine of, ma'am, it's okay, ma'am, I need you to stop, ma'am, you're going to, ma'am.
The staff said that her hand rarely left the call button.
That's terrible.
At 2:05 a.m., she also goes into respiratory arrest. Doctors rush in, and she's awake. They're talking to her, but within 40 minutes, she was stable. And then Baker comes in to test her blood for the amount of oxygen in her blood at the time of the arrest. But her blood came back normal, and now he knows that some shittery is afoot because that's extremely rare for someone who just had a heart attack.
Also, this is when you first see the syringe of blood, and it just gave me the heebie-jeebies. It does not matter to me. I can go get any tattoo, any piercing. But if you want to draw blood, I act like a little baby, and I almost pass out. It is terrifying to me. Oh, I hate it.
Also, I would like to note that Jean's respiratory arrest happened during one of Efren Saldivar's shift.
He was a kind of a bad luck guy, was Efren on, because it's bad luck because patients die when he's on.
So Bob's leaving a shift, and this is when we're introduced to Everett Weir, another respiratory therapist. They're talking about Goff, and he brings up all of these rumors that he started hearing.
We're walking out to the car, and we're talking about golf, and he says, oh, that patient, Efren did that, killed her.
You know about Efren and his magic syringe?
His magic syringe, yeah.
No, I know.
And Bob's like, the fuck? And pulls him aside, and amazing reenactment. Also, let's really talk about this. When he's like, don't look at her, look at me.
I'm hearing all these rumors about you in the hospital, but I haven't been listening to them. Don't look at her, look at me.
Because Everett basically just ratted him out. He's saying, one, all these rumors, two, that he was fucking around with Bob's patients, and then three, so everything's coming to light basically for Bob Baker at this point.
So that brings us to April 1997. Baker went to his boss and told him about the rumors. He just finally got fed up with it.
Well, he's been hearing a lot of shit by now.
Mm-hmm.
So he's telling his boss that Efren is killing his patients. His boss is like, that seems really far-fetched.
In 1997, Baker went to his boss and told him about the rumors. So hospital officials tallied the deaths on Salvador's shifts over the past year and compared them to other times. Nothing was unusual. The hospital found no link, so they just figured that it was just, a coworker pissed off at another coworker.
Right. So now we're at Myrtle. Mm-hmm. Who's being cared for in ICU after she came down with pneumonia. Her niece Vicky was with her and expecting to have her home for her birthday, but after several days, she stopped breathing while her heart continued. She was slowly suffocating.
So,
and that,
yeah. So if you're not catching the pattern here, essentially what's happening with all these people is that their muscles are becoming paralyzed. They can still see, they can still hear, they can still be active and know what's going on. They just can't move. But they know everything that's happening. They just can't stop it.
When you wake up from a nightmare and you feel paralyzed for a second?
No,
that's what I think of. Just a wet sock of a person.
He's not even socks. He's one. Because
a singular lost wet sock.
When you care about your loved one, you bring them into the hospital. You expect them to be taken care of. You go home that night knowing that they're safe and being taken care of by professionals. And you take solace in knowing that life is sacred to the people who work in that institution.
So at this point, the hospital knew something that weird was going on.
We literally have the exact same note, Audie.
The hospital just knew something weird was going on, but they didn't really know exactly how to approach it.
But then
an anonymous call comes in to an administrator, and it was a man saying that he had a lady friend that worked on the staff. A lady friend.
He called and said it was that he was using a magic syringe, and that was that he was helping patients die. Helping patients die.
And specifically says him by name. So she's like, okay, thank you so much. I'll call you back. Hello, 911. I'm gonna need you to get your booties down here because something going on.
Now we're introduced to police officer John McLennan. He's hype about being invited to the chief office because obviously this is going to be a big case, right?
Well, that's weird as fuck.
So the hospital tells them about this anonymous call, and he's like...
First of all, they did a background check on Efren, and they found out that he had an extensive criminal record. Huge. So the detective that ran this was Detective Anthony Fuchsia, I think. I probably did that wrong, whatever. I blame YouTube for the closed captions. These weren't actual closed captions.
Also, they changed how they spelled Efren,
I noticed.
10 times.
So...
Everett, Efan,
yeah.
Afan.
So I'm sorry if we don't get that spelling correctly somewhere. Don't judge us.
They didn't know what it was either.
Yeah. Also, when we meet this detective, I just have, get some damn chapstick. Literally, his lips are like the Sahara Desert. They are peeling more than the face mask at preteen sleepovers. Need of thirst. That they need to go on TikTok and just scroll through the traps. They are just so dry.
It's why are they so
DMs,
dry?
Man. It's just like nothing. Absolutely nothing. Anyway.
Crying.
But the large criminal history included attempted murder, theft, and possession of narcotics. Detective Anthony and Will go to Jeff's house. Would you like to tell us what kind of interaction?
Right, yeah. So they go to his house, and he answers the door in his boxers, I'm guessing, right? Like, so we're introduced to him, but not really, because he just, like, steps outside of the door and basically tells the officers that it's just a big misunderstanding, that they probably just heard wrong, that he doesn't have time for this, and slam the doors. So now the investigators are like, oh, well, that's not weird at all. Like, I'm
sorry. He literally says, well, that's not going to work. And I just imagine the door slamming and him just turning to Will and being like, well, dang. So now we meet Evelyn Abrams. So this is the woman that worked the night shift with Efren.
Hospital chick. I have her as hospital chick, yeah.
Okay, her name is Evelyn.
Right.
Investigators found out that Evelyn was a lady friend that they were referring to. So they went to talk to her, and she said that they were all just rumors, and she didn't think that he was capable of doing something like this, and that she had worked with him for years.
Well, but she does tell us that she's sleeping with both of them. So now we have a love triangle. Like, Audie, I can't. Why Efren? Why are you love triangle with Jeff and Efren? But
I mean, this is like a whole...
So they're thinking that Jeff just called and accused Efren because of this love triangle thing that they've got going on with Evelyn. Like he's jealous or something, and called and made this rumor up because of that. And that's kind of what Evelyn is leading everyone to think. Audie, I'm 20 minutes in and I'm exhausted.
Yeah, no, this is one of those documentaries where I was like, oh, this is going to be like a little while, but it's not going to take that long. And I was 5 minutes in and I went, oh.
Buckle up, Buttercup.
I already have a full page of notes. 5 minutes in.
So then, I'm not even sure who they're pranking with this flower, but they're trying to do a flower prank, right? They're trying to, like, put flour in someone's locker.
Baker pulls the police detectives outside after talking to Evelyn and lets them know, hey, so one night, like, I was playing this prank with one of my friends, and we just so happened, they were, like, doing something with one of their coworkers' lockers, and they knew that Efren wasn't coming in for a couple days. So they decided to just shove all of the shit into his locker, in which they just found, like, bags of drugs.
A big-ass bag of drugs.
And, like, my first head was like, oh, big bag of cocaine. No, these are, like, pill bottles. Like, bags of different pill bottles.
It's, like, morphine, Demerol, Valium, vials.
Like, a bunch of different stuff, you know. He literally has a trap house in his locker right now.
Well, maybe he's selling it to someone. And then I saw on the shelf 2 vials of succinylcholine.
Succinylcholine chloride paralyzes the muscles and is used to make it easier to insert breathing tubes.
But it's deadly.
It's a muscle... all it is a muscle paralyzer. And it's what they administer, like Devin said, when you are getting your stomach pumped or, like, have to have a breathing tube put in.
Right, you're in a dream state. You don't freak out. You still know what's going on, but you can't feel it.
So, Baker wanted to go to somebody about this, but he was like, I mean, I'm in your locker. I can't really say that.
Right. He thought that he was going to be in trouble for being in his locker illegally, but he knew that Efren couldn't be using this for personal use because he'd kill himself.
Yeah. So, the detectives decided to go to Baker's supervisor, who said that Baker and Efren hated each other.
Yeah, I have word on the street is Bob and Efren hate each other. Rumor has it.
So at this time, they finally bring in Efren, and at this time, they call him down. They only had one investigator in the police station. I guess it was, like, late at night, and they asked him to take a polygraph test, in which we go to...
Youngblood.
In which I was like...
Youngblood is the polyman. And I want to know, is that one of the real names?
The detective leaves and is in the bug room, so, you know, like, the room right next door to... the polygraph room, so that we can listen in case anything goes wrong.
Yeah, because Efren agrees that he'll take the polygraph test because they're like, we think that this is bullshit, but take this polygraph to prove it. And Efren says that he will, but then he gets in there and he didn't want to. Youngblood's like, but why? Why, dude? Why?
This is such a cool last name.
So Efren says maybe that he assisted in a murder, and that's why he doesn't want to take the polygraph because he doesn't think that he's going to pass. And he starts informing Youngblood that one of this intense care nurses gave this story, and I think it's bullshit personally, but he starts telling Youngblood that he overheard a nurse talking about how someone was going to be taken off life support. He walked by and like knew that they weren't. And then he goes and asks a nurse about it. And then he tells us that she made a face or something insinuating that he should do something about it.
Well, he went up and asked in a way of like, hey, isn't this patient supposed to, you know, not be on life support anymore? And she kind of said something like, oh, you're right. Like, hey, go change it. Thanks for noticing that, you know? And I totally get what you think of, like, could totally be bullshit, and you're right. But I also thought of it because of the way that they acted out the scene. Because, you know, it's not real footage. But so maybe it's just the way they acted it out that made me think this, that he is looking at her, walking up to this body, like, I'm gonna do this in front of you? Like, holy shit, you're gonna watch me do this? Like, you just told me to do it? Like, fuck yeah, you just told me to do this. Like, that's what I think was going through his head. He was like, yeah, I legally did that shit, and you just watched it.
Well, and then it took 15 minutes for them to die, and he admits...
for them to suffocate.
Yeah.
Suffocate because their lungs are paralyzed because they... Basically, while this drug is administered, it's in place for you to have a breathing tube. That's the whole point. Your muscles are paralyzed, so you need equipment to run your muscles for you. So you're just dying... And your brain knows it's happening and you can't move or do anything about it.
I hate everything about this.
So it feels like you're drowning, but you can't move in the water.
We hear the phrase, helping other patients die, where he's admitting to helping other patients to death. And I'm just like, yeah, you're a wet sock. You're a wet sock of a human.
And this is something that's just referred to in the medical field as assisted suicide. And some doctors do believe in this, which we'll get to. But Salvador is slowly talking. And remember, this is just the polygraph guy. This isn't
even
cop.
Like his questioning.
No. And because of this, though, once he didn't want to take the polygraph, the Youngblood decided to start almost interrogating him with questions rather than it just being normal questions. So... Salvador slowly just starts talking and he's like, yeah, no, I think it was definitely less than 50. At least 90. Oh, maybe 200. Like, it just keeps
going up. And I'm like, Youngblood, how are you? So calm right now.
Like, I mean, you're a polygraph person, so I totally get you're probably just see the most, or hear the most random shit. What?
So at this 200 mark, Youngblood's like, yo, I need to go tell someone. So he goes out and they decide that they need to read him his rights, but they don't want to spook him because they want him to continue to talk. So they think that he's going to shut up and get a lawyer, but he is just singing till the cows come home. Will Curry is like, fuck, let me get some help.
Yeah.
So they place him under arrest.
They call in the sergeant because this is the middle of the night. So he's alone and they're like, we actually have someone here that's probably a serial killer. Or at least confessing to being a serial killer. So we need to call in Sergeant. So they call in Sergeant McCulp. They read him his rights. Don't give a fuck. He still confesses.
I have, this documentary has an hour left. What are we going to talk about for an hour?
Literally, that was, yeah. I was like, oh my god, we're already at the confession. What's going on
What
here?
What are we going to talk about for the next hour?
Oh my god, before we move on, this is what really just, this whole line.
Yes,
just sums
about
up.
How many people. I know your territory.
This whole line just sums it up. The amount of people that he confessed to killing. If this is true, then that means that he killed more people than Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, and John Wayne Gacy combined.
And I'm never leaving my house again.
No, I'm a hermit. I live at home now.
He's been murdering people for 9 years at this point, within hospitals in the same way. Everyone is like, what the fuck? Everyone is like, what is going on? But they need more evidence. And here's the shit, too. Ready? They have 48 hours to get hard evidence before they have to free him.
Because they currently have him arrested, and you can only keep somebody for 48 hours without hard evidence. There's not even a body right now, technically.
Right.
Because it's only suspicion and rumors. But just, dude, how many times have you heard, like, a crazy rumor at work? I mean, obviously, you've never heard a rumor of, like, hey, by the way, Bobby kills people, but still, I mean, how many times have you heard crazy?
I definitely worked at a bar, and there was a rumor that this guy that worked in the back killed people, and I'm gonna be honest, I kind of believe it.
Next episode.
I told you we're doing the hash slinging slasher. All right, so they go to Efren's home with a search warrant for proof of poison. But he lived with his brother and his parents. So his brother's, like, emotionally watching in the doorway as they, like, go through his shit. They do find 100 pornography videos, but no paralyzing drugs. They do find Versive, a sedative that you can use with Pavilon, which is a paralyzing drug, but no paralyzing drugs. Mm-hmm. Detective John is sad about this lack of drug evidence, but they did find a printout with a blood gas test, and the name at the bottom is signed Dr. Jack Kavorskin.
If you don't know who that is, he was identifying as this doctor, and this doctor believed in assisted suicide.
Wet sock. But at this point, they still don't have proof that he's killed anyone, and the 48 hours are about to go up. They have to put a confessed serial killer back on the loose. Mm-hmm. So the progress of the case had to be a secret. It can't go anywhere. It can't be on the news because they don't want him to know how much they know, you know? And what's crazy is at this point, he could run at any time and they really couldn't do anything about it.
So they started gathering the records of Salvadori's patients. They reached out to Salvadori's friends and family to kind of try and get a feel for what this guy was like. One of his high school girlfriends.
Oh, wait, yeah. So Detective Randy Osborne conducted an interview with people that were the closest to him. They tracked down his high school girlfriend.
The last conversation that the girlfriend had with him in high school was how he wanted to go on and be a respiratory therapist and how he wanted to do that solely so that he could do assisted suicide.
Well, yeah, what? So he told her that he wanted to help people, and he wanted to help people by putting them out of their misery, that he had no problem killing people. Other people said that he was a shadow man, that he was lazy, he was quiet and uncaring towards other patients. Another nurse said a few years ago that she was working with him, and a male patient near death, she like heard an alarm go off in his room, and he was in the room, and this guy's like flatlining, and she was working on him, and he wouldn't help, and he held his finger up and said, "Shh." Like, she's, like, trying to fix him, and she's like, "Why aren't you helping me?" And he's like, shh, like, telling her to let him go.
I would just leave, and I would be like, I don't work at this hospital anymore.
I don't know how you, I mean, yeah. And so she's like, that didn't sit well with me. And I'm like, well, no fucking shit.
The angel of death would be the kind of person who plays God. He selects a group of people or an individual to eliminate them, and this power gives them some kind of a psychological rush to be able to say, I will take your life whenever I choose.
So basically we find out that poison is really hard to find in the system. And it's one of those things that you are apparently 20 to 30 times more likely of a chance to get away with murder if you use poison.
I don't know if we should tell people that.
I mean, Oxygen did. It's already open information. They couldn't figure out any of the poisons without a toxologist, which I think is just like a shit ton of money to hire. So
well, and it's like, it's not like it's a gunshot, you know? They don't, if they don't suspect poison, they don't look for it. Mm-hmm. So Daniel Hinose tells us that they called the FBI, and it was their opinion that they needed to find a toxologist to help extract these samples because the medical community wasn't able to find it. The detectives now have to decipher, you know, thousands of medical charts, and that's not exactly something that's in detective training. So now they're all going out and buying these medical dictionaries to understand how to even find the information.
We're looking for what would normally be, so the normal way to die, for lack of better words, the normal process of someone passing away would be that a patient's heart stops and then the respiratory fails. The opposite was happening with these cases. So the respiratory was failing and then the heart was stopping.
Well, and on top of that, this pattern is continually a patient is admitted with a serious illness, and then they receive treatment. They're doing well. They appear to be, you know, doing A-okay, and then they just aren't.
Oof. This part gave me chills. In all of these cases, they would see that the heart had increased and sped up, indicating that the person had great fear before that they were passing away.
Yeah, that they were going into like fight or flight.
That's why he chose people that wanted to live. That's why they went in fear. They wanted to be alive. Oof!
So they're looking for a way to narrow the victim list down. They backtrack 2 years and look at every death in the last 2 years that happened while Efren was on shift. But they ignore the first 7 years. That brought this list down to like 171. But of those, 54 were excluded because they didn't have any of the remains. So that left us with 117 to investigate. So they start this victim list.
The toxologist that is trying to help them has never performed this specific type of test. You have to remember that some of these victims that they're going to look at are years and years old, that have already been decaying and are underground. And so the reason that they're doing all these statistics of the 172 bodies is to look and see the specific death circumstances in order to try and dig up only the ones that they have to, which is just so icky.
Because at this point, we're at the Contact Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, and Brian Andreessen is the director of Labs and Forensics Department. And that's what he's explaining, that they haven't been able to do any of these studies on these kinds of things. He can tell us that, I still can't even say this freaking drug, but cyclinyl chloride does quickly break down into these natural chemicals into the body. So if he was using that, it would be even harder to find that chemical in the remains or tissues that we would have.
So during this time, it gets out in the media at this point that
this is on,
something's going wrong.
Do you have the date?
No, I have no idea.
Okay.
But eventually, around the time that they're starting to identify around the time that they're opening all of his past patient cases, because they're now reaching out to all these families, it's getting out to the media. I'm assuming because of the families being able to talk about it. And because so many people, keep in mind, they are going to families to confront and ask about these things, but these families are people that already had a hunch that something weird had happened.
Right. It's March 27, 1998, and after all of this has hit the media and the families are like, well, I was wondering what the hell happened to my grandfather when he was doing fine and then just wasn't. So now we're interviewing these families and trying to find patterns in this.
So the brother had come out at one point and addressed the media saying, he's not here, but we think he's innocent, but, he's not here. Just leave us alone. At this point, they're advertising on the news what would have happened, and they have a hotline where if you think that a loved one has died from this, that you can call and hopefully, they can try and help. So because of this ad, a man named Larry calls.
Larry Schlegel, and I love him.
Yeah, no, he's a sweetie.
And again, I have, these were fake names, and you couldn't give me an easier name than Schlegel. Why not Larry Smith?
Yeah, but, hey, at least we got Larry.
Yeah, so he's watching the case, and he sees the case on TV, and his mother died at the hospital a year earlier from a respiratory problem. So he calls the hotline. She had pneumonia, and him and his son had come to see her on New Year's, and he tells us she was breathing and talking fine, but less than an hour later...
I'm sorry, he says, well... she was breathing as well as she could.
He does say that. He does.
And I was like, yikes, okay.
So he's saying that she's looking forward to going home, but she was classified as a DNR. It's been a few days by this point, and the nurse goes in to check on her, and she had just stopped breathing.
Well, and what's really sad is that she was actually supposed to go home earlier, but because she went in on New Year's, no one really wants to do shit, because... New Year's is a time when people it's kind of like 4th of July. People set off fireworks and are drunk and just doing crazy things. So it's a higher time for car wrecks or accidents. So because of this, they decided that they weren't going to discharge her for a couple days and to just wait. So she wouldn't have been in the hospital if they just waited. So she was supposed to leave the morning of January 2nd. A nurse went to check on her, and after only an hour, she had no pulse. After she was doing completely fine, only an hour later, she was not breathing, no pulse.
So now the media sends the hospial into an uproar. He suspends the entire respiratory team. I had questions about this. Don't people have to breathe? How do you just suspend a whole department?
Hold on. First off, can we just note that the police received over 130 messages from people thinking that their family member or loved one might have been affected. That's crazy. But second... I would like to say, I think that what they're saying is that they suspended that unit as a whole, so those patients got shipped out somewhere else. They're not just sitting there with no doctors, left for dead, like fucking puppies in an animal shelter.
Well, I had questions.
No, they got shipped out to other hospitals, and I'm sure they just closed the unit for an investigation. So they send all 44 members of the respiratory therapy department, including... Bob Baker, specifically called, but 39 employees were eventually cleared, but Evelyn Abrams and 3 others were not.
Dun, dun, dun. The next week, Efren comes out of hiding, and to do so, he goes on TV and told 2 magazines that he made up told 2 news magazines that he just made up the whole damn confession. The task force is like, what the fuck? Efren says that he was just depressed and wanted to die. Also, can we talk about how the narration guy says die?
He spells it like hair dye. Like D-Y-E.
Oh, well, not just the closed captions, but the guy narrating this was like, Efren explained that he was depressed and wanted to die. It was really intense. And I was like, okay, narration.
Basically, the profiler just comes in and profiles him and kind of gives the police department an angle to look at him on.
Because it's such a backwards case. Usually we have a victim, and from that victim we go forward and we try to find the suspect. In this instance, we have a suspect and we have no victims. So we bring in criminal psychologist, and I have in my notes, that sounds fun, Chris Mahamney. And then he explains why Efren came to be a respiratory therapist. Audie, would you like to tell us why he became a respiratory therapist?
So he became a respiratory therapist because somebody who was a respiratory therapist came into his job and had on the full uniform.
At the supermarket. He's like working at the mini mart down the lane.
He's just like, I like how that looks. Sure. And to which I say, if we all just chose careers based off how we looked, we'd all have very different careers.
Well, it's that he liked, this guy comes in with, like, I'm sure, like, his stethoscope and badge or whatever. He just sees power. Like, he just sees, like, well, this guy has his fucking shit together, so I want to be like him. Well, and he has control and power, and he obviously lacked that.
So, something that I do think about with serial killers, especially with cases like this, is how scary it is at how smart they are.
Oh, yeah.
Think he got a doctor in.
Yeah. Crazy.
I wish you guys could see my face.
I do too. It's very puzzling. It explains exactly how I'm feeling right now. So now they know that he's going to kill again because he's telling us, like, once a cork is off the bottle, you can't put it back on. And, like, no other fantasy is going to measure up to actually doing it. So they go back to that hospital chick, Evelyn. They offer her, that was the love triangle girl that worked in the hospital and fucked both of them. Well, they offer her limited immunity in exchange for whatever she knows about it. So then she starts singing Till the Cows Come Home, saying that something wasn't right and that one time he came to her and said that he accidentally had given a patient Pavulon, but she didn't know who the patient was. And then she said that he once targeted her own patient, and she was like,
Don't do that. I like that.
Check yourself.
So, remembering an incident, a woman named Lisa came in. She had trouble breathing and was placed on oxygen. She asked Salvador to collect a blood sample. A few minutes after, the nurse left Salvador in the room with the patient. She came back a few minutes later and noticed that the patient wasn't breathing and called a code blue. The patient had suddenly stopped breathing and her muscles were paralyzed. She was a DNR, so they weren't allowed to resuscitate her, and it took her 40 minutes to die. He comes in and says that she's a DNR, so like, haha. Can't do shit, can you?
The detectives go meet with Larry. That's the guy that called in from seeing the ad on TV, and basically asked Ivan, like, so can we dig up your mom? Like, it was really fucked up, but like, yeah, they essentially have to start digging up these bodies to get any tissue to see if there's Pavulon in them.
So it took them a full year of this guy in this lab trying to figure out some way to run this test, because nobody had run a test on a corpse like this.
Yeah. Trying
to find poison in a body that was this old. It took him so much time and so long to figure this out. Like, I just respect scientists and chemists. I mean, this stuff is really amazing when you look into it. But he said that it was so bad that his neighbors were starting to worry because he wasn't picking up his garbage or mowing his lawn. He was so concentrated on trying to figure this out that he wasn't even taking care of his house. The families cooperated with the police because they knew that these people died under weird circumstances. So they were like, yeah, dig up my fucking mom.
Well, like, they wanted answers, and yeah, we needed answers. So it's March 1999, and they have identified 20 possible victims. These were all listed as natural causes, but they had to prove that that was wrong. I had so many questions about this grave digging scene, and I was like, is this fake? Yes, it's real. That's real. Why are we watching this?
I don't think it was real.
No, some of it was real. They go back and forth.
Some of it was?
Yeah. So now they're doing an autopsy, and it's so sad because they're being told that they felt like they knew these people because they'd been so invested in their cases for so long. At this point, they knew these victims' families. They knew the stories, where things had gone wrong, and where the pieces were missing. And I just felt for them, like, oh, my heartstrings.
Disgustingly enough, the bodies were apparently really well preserved because they were in these, like, sealed coffins underground. Which, like, as terrible as it sounds, it's good because they were able to get really good tissue samples
right.
from these victims.
So they're bringing tissue samples to the same lab as before.
They personally drive them there. They said that once they took these samples, that they would not let them out of their eyesight for 1 fucking minute.
And I felt like that was really respectful to the victims' families.
But you gotta think, they're just like, we've been working on this for a year. If we mess up this, like, we dug up these bodies.
For nothing.
Just so much would be for nothing. So it's the same test that they didn't know if it's gonna work or not because it's never been done on anything before. So if it messes up, then they've messed up these samples.
Right,
they're
like,
not gonna get again.
If this fails, then all of that was for nothing and Efren will remain free, but like no pressure. So they start checking kidneys, lungs. I have in my notes lots of science. So they filter through the polymer and that would stick to the drug. And they test that with a gas chromatograph mass spectrometer, which can detect compounds weighing less than 1/1000th of a gram.
They grind it up, the samples. Grinded up the tissue from these people into a paste that was full of kidneys and lung.
The first few are negative, and then, boom, Pavulon.
There's a certain weight of the poison that, like, I guess is just like this poison has this weight and nothing else, or is very specific. And so if they found that weight, then they would find the poison, and he did. After a full year, when they discover a problem, they discover that the victim had been given 2 milligrams of Pavulon 8 days before he died. This, literally 8 days. They even say that the drug would have metabolized in 20 hours, long after he was deceased. But they're afraid that the jury, that basically the case wouldn't hold up because they could say that it was in her system.
Audie, at this point, I could hardly even focus because every time that they said Pavulon, my closed captions was saying popular.
Popular.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought of.
Be
Popular. They basically check in for progress or lack thereof it. And they're draining their finances at this point.
Right, yeah. The captain's just starting to get pissed because they technically don't have any evidence and it's been a full year.
And they need hard evidence yesterday or the investigation's going to be shut down. They finally get evidence because an autopsy lights up like people in their 20s on 420. These results come back and the Pavulon... I didn't mean to shock you like that. That's just like, you good, dog? Did I break you? It does. It lights up. These results come back. They're like firing up for Pavulon. It's in her brain, kidneys, liver, like everything. This bitch has Pavulon everywhere. And she hadn't medically been admitted any. So this is the first step in proving that Efren was admitting everyone Pavulon and paralyzing them into suffocation.
It's not even the first step. This is it. Basically, they're like, this is it. We can go and arrest him now because they went back and found on the record that none of these patients had ever been administered Pavulon for anything. So the only reason that it would be in their system is to kill them.
And was from Efren. They can now arrest Efren for 3 counts of murder, but they keep examining, and they have now linked him to 6 counts of murder.
So they just kept going with the bodies to try and just find more and more.
They get all the medical records of those 6 victims, and aside from Eleanor, none of them had been medically admitted any Pavulon. I'm so tired.
Yeah, no, this one, trust me, I think this documentary is great. I love Oxygen's documentary, but this could have easily been done in 45 minutes.
Then we get another buzzkill because in the paper of wrongful death lawsuits from John Scavort's family, it had all been dismissed, so due to lack of evidence. And now they're freaking out because they feel like their case is going to get dismissed for lack of evidence as well.
But they do find, one thing that helps their side is that the timelines from when the patients were in the hospital and died were the times that he was on the clock.
That is true. And at this point, it's been years of investigation, and on January 9th, 2001, they finally have enough. They kept a close watch on him. I would hope so.
Right? So he's leaving his house. He leaves for work, and they end up pulling him over. Like a crap ton of officers. The scene is literally like straight out of a movie. They have so many officers for this one guy.
Hands up! Hands up!
Yeah,
out of the vehicle!
It's like one dude, and he's just like not resisting. He's like, okay.
Yeah, he doesn't resist at all. He just gets out of the car, gets down.
Not at all. Yeah. Detective is very proud to say that he bagged a serial killer in his career.
Let's talk about he does a lot of great work, but in this moment at 1:26, he says,
a lot of police officers don't get to say they bagged a serial killer during their career.
And I'm like, okay, now, I honestly hope that we have so few serial killers that hardly any of you get to say that you have bagged a serial killer. I hope to God that we don't just have like a confetti rain of serial killers.
So he confessed that he did it. I hope that you got this. He confessed that he killed all of these people because of workload. And there's just too many patients. And I was like, listen, do you know how many times? Like,
you don't know stress.
I work a retail job. How many times it's been closed and all I've wanted to do is just say, hey, can you, like, get the fuck out of my store? Let alone, I'm just gonna kill you. You know what? You've just pissed me off to the point I don't want to check your vitals anymore. We're just gonna zilch and done.
Yeah, so it's been 9 years, and Saldivar is no longer free. I'm happy about it. They bring him in for this one last questioning, and it's no longer if you did it, it's why did you do it. And he said in a very low volume, he did it because of the workload. Just too many patients.
He said that he would kill on impulse and never think about it again.
He would kill someone and just, he never thought about them.
That is a douche moon.
A douche moon? A moon of douche.
A moon.
You are
that big that you are orbiting around the Earth because you just can't even be on here.
That's just bullshit, right? Because, like, then you think back to the psychologist, and that goes against what he's saying, because, I mean, like, it confirms that he was lazy, but the psychologist was talking about how he felt inferior and needed power, and that's why he went into that in the first place, because what better way to be in control than to be in control of someone's life?
So he ends up pleading guilty to avoid the death penalty.
But still has, like, no remorse. He really thinks that he was being, like, fucking helpful in assisting these suicides.
If you want to talk about no remorse, I'm forgetting who said it, but one of the detectives says, well, you know, I just kind of wish that he had gotten the death penalty because apparently the drug that he had been administering to people.
Yes, is a chemical in the death penalty.
They were like, oh, you know, it just would have been kind of poetic.
It would have been a poetic full circle is what he calls it.
I said, what kind of poet? I mean.
But, like, dog, I don't know. Like, I don't know your grieving process, and I don't know what I would be saying and feeling in that time. So, like, I really can't judge you. But, like, yeah, I picked that up, too. So then Albert McKenzie, I don't have any notes about anything that he said of relevance. I just wanted to point out that he looked really derpy walking from the hallway down that trail of boxes, and I just thought it was funny.
So that's pretty much it. He is sentenced to 6 life sentences and 15 years for attempted murder.
And because he pleaded guilty, he avoided the death penalty by pavulon. So that's our top wet sock person of our series so far, guys.
Definitely.
Do we know what he's doing now? He's just living out in prison?
Well, yeah,
he's alive.
He has 6 life sentences. He's definitely there for
I know,
life.
but sometimes they die. Let me goog.
I don't think so.
Nope. Yep. Still alive.
Yep. Born September 30th, 1969 in
Victims.
Texas.
6 to 200 plus.
I know, I see that. That's crazy. He was apprehended March 13th on 1998. Oh, early life. Wow, there's literally, like, nothing about him.
We know what we know.
I know, but, like, his early life is literally 5 sentences. Like, not even. It's just like, he did this. He went to the college for this. And he obtained work at this center. And the night shift where there were fewer It literally just ends working the night shift where there was fewer staff on duty.
Well, because he always killed people at like 2, 3, 4 a.m.
Well, I don't like that.
I don't like any of it, dude.
I mean, well, yeah, no, but there's peaks. Some of it's worse than the other.
I think we're going to wrap it up, but that's pretty much where it ends. If you're not a true crime person, that's totally fine. You don't have to watch any of these documentaries to listen to us scream about it.
Oh, yeah. It's just like, think of it as you're on FaceTime with us, and we're just telling you all about these terrible movies we've been watching.
Right. So Audie and I do our makeup together every morning and talk about murders that we've listened to or watched, and makeup and murder is our thing. So we decided to share it with you guys and create Serial Sistaaas. So thank you guys so much for joining us. We put out a new podcast every Monday wherever you listen to your podcast. Audie, where can they find you?
I'm Awkward Audie.
You can find us on Instagram at Serial Sistaaas. That's Sistaaas with 3 A's, Sistaas. And you can find me at Devin Dennis XOXO on all the things all the time.
Guys, we are also on Twitter now.
We have a Twitter that I don't know how to use, so Audie's doing most of it.
I'm pretty much running the whole thing, but I've really been enjoying tweeting, so please tweet us the most random stuff. Also, if you have a case that you want us to cover, we are totally up for suggestions.
Hit up those DMs. I think that's it.
I'm good. Thank you so much for listening this far. This is the end of episode 3.
Thanks, guys. Episode 3. Thanks for holding out till we got good mics. Okay, now, 1, 2, 3. Serial Sistaaas! God, we're so fucking annoying. What was that Sarah Sanderson laugh?
the circumstances.
Audie, I really feel like we've established throughout this that I care about you more than you care about me.
No, I think we care about each other the same. It's just that I find more dark humor funny than you do. And then you realize that he's addressing the person who's ever filming. You know, it's like reenacted to look this way. And I literally have me picking up my fam from their house on my Snapchat story because he's just walking. He's like, "Hi, Mom."
I sound like Phil of the Future. Which can detect...
Him?
Well, that was like...
That's like the smartest person off the top of your fucking head is Phil of the Future.
Yeah,
Did
maybe
you know-
that's not what I want to
David,
go with.
Did you know that Phil of the Future, like, took place in times that we've already passed? Does that fuck with you? Did you know Back to the Future was placed in 2015?
Shut your hoary little mouth. It's not about
Who you are.
who you killed.
I almost fell off my chair! Oh my god, but have you... bloopers. Have you seen the actual video of, like, all the times where they'll forget to put the props on stage and Glenda's like, no. She'll, like, go to get the lipstick and she's looking through all the pillows and she goes...
That's
she's
hilarious.
Just like, I'm done. Who the
I
fuck
love them.
is getting fired tonight?
It's like a douche boxy.
It's bigger than a douchebag. They're like a...
No, because he's not. It's bigger than a douche bag. Is it really bigger than a douche box? Because here's the thing.
It's a douche treehouse.
A homeboy did a lot. Okay.
He's up in the air.
Like
so
a 10 by 5 or 10 by 10?
Yeah.
Okay.
So then you miss it, and then all of a sudden you look up and you go, oh shit!
Okay.
We got some right there!
I'll accept a douche treehouse. If you're not a crew trime. If you're not a crew. No, I can't say it.